Hey, welcome to the Victims and Villains podcast, a podcast extension of the nonprofit which educates and engages individuals like yourself on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. My name is Captain Nostalgia, and I have to ask, what is your favorite scary movie? Because we are talking about 2022's Scream. I am low key freaking out, and I am joined by Mr. Brandon Riff Daddy Miller. What's up, man?
Dude, glad to be here with my best friend talking about one of my favorite horror franchises ever. This is how the Spider-Man fans felt a couple of weeks ago. We know how they feel now. It's just we didn't have any portals open up to give us Matthew. Oh, spoiler territory. Anyway.
Not quite there yet. No,
Yeah,
man, I am right there with you. This was easily in my top 5 most anticipated for this year. I was really curious what they were gonna do because I love Radio Silence. Ready or Not was one of my favorite films from a few years ago. We both equally love that movie. We're huge fans of what Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson did with the first 4 films. So it was kind of interesting to see what they were going to do with this film. But yeah, man, let's just jump into some general like spoiler-free thoughts, or like before we even get there, man, like let's kind of explore our love for this franchise. Like what is it particularly about this franchise that you love so much?
Well, not forgetting the fact that it was my first horror movie. My mother, which you know firsthand, I don't have the fondest memories of my mom growing up, but one of them is her showing me Scream when it came out on VHS, and I don't know why she thought I should watch that. However old I was probably 7, 8 years old. So it was kind of one of those things that started the interest in horror. And as time went on, it just became something just that I felt never really got topped in the slasher genre. I mean, there's been some great slashers since Scream, but it's just it brought a whole new definition to slasher to me as I got older and watched the ones that came before Scream. Because before Ghost Face, you had like Freddy and like very animated and very there's like then you had Jason very like slow and Michael very slow and methodical. And here's Ghostface getting his crap kicked in, jumping through windows, taking a beating. He's a psychopath running after you with a knife. It's just like so more realistic to me. And because like, dude, I mean, I've been to Atlanta before, seen someone around the road with a knife in their hand. Like that's realistic. So like it's just been one of those things where it's just like it really brings the realness for me because it's like that could actually happen. And it's just a great concept, great story. I mean, dude, like I named my dog after Officer Dewey. I got married and dressed up as Ghostface immediately after I got married. You were there.
I can 100% attest to this. And much like yourself, like this is one of the only franchises that I can say I grew up on. This, Saw, and the MCU. But out of all 3 of those, this franchise means the most to me. Wes Craven is arguably one of the greatest filmmakers that has ever existed. He is the only filmmaker that I have a portrait of in my office. I got this like painting that was done a couple years ago, and it's got like Wes Craven in the center. It was right after he died, but then it has like The Hills Have Eyes, Scream, Freddy Krueger. And it just kind of like it's a nice amalgamation, like tribute to his legacy. But then I think also at the same time you have Kevin Williamson, who was like a virtually like unknown guy at the time, and I mean he just went off and just created an entirely like reinvented the genre at that time. Because when you look at horror, when the original Scream came out, I mean it was just there was nothing else like it. Like we had just kind of reached this point where it was like just tiresome like reboots and like sequels and like all these like slasher franchises had done something. And so like being able to like see something that was fresh and original like Scream was just, I mean, it just, your jaw hit the floor the first time you watch it. And like even now, like I've seen this movie so many freaking times, and like I will still sit down and watch the original one and just absolutely lose my marbles at how good it is. And I can't say that there are many films like that, but Scream is just so far up there for me. And so like this new installment, like I went back and rewatched the first 4 films, 2 documentaries, but also went back and checked out the films from Radio Silence. The directors behind this, they've done they did segments for Southbound in the first VHS, but they also have done Devil's Due, which was an interesting story, and then Ready or Not, as we've already said. But like just kind of coming all into this, like I had a high expectations, and man, I mean, like I probably wouldn't be a horror fan if it wasn't for Scream.
I can back that up, because I probably wouldn't be either. And you know, when this movie first came out, like talks and everything, and when I found out that the directors are the same people that did Ready or Not, I felt so trusted as a fan of Scream, because Ready or Not was just so good. And I was like, okay, if those guys did that, like I full on, like I trust this, and it delivered.
Yeah, and I mean, like Matt, I'm probably gonna mispronounce his name vaguely. Bettinelli and Tyler Gillett are the 2 directors that brought this film together, but also like just the talent. I mean, like even when you look at the writers involved in this, it's James Vanderbilt, who wrote Zodiac, which is a great movie. He wrote both of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And on top of that, you also have Guy Busick, who also wrote Ready or Not. And I think that these 4 guys coming in to bring in something new and exciting it's refreshing to kind of see someone else take this property. I know that there's a lot of other people that could be like, man, like it's really kind of terrifying to see someone step away from their original thing, but sometimes you need that. Like you look at what they were able to do a few years ago with Halloween and Halloween Kills last year, and how they're going to end with Halloween Ends this year. And I got to say, man, like I'm really excited. I was really excited coming into this, what they were going to do. And boy, howdy, let's get into some spoiler free thoughts. What are your thoughts on this movie?
I thought this movie was just, I mean, it had your nostalgia and it had your modern, and it just put it together so well, because I felt like it was like the 90s kids who are now older introducing these generation Gen X, I guess you could say, to horror, and they have their own horror taste too, and it's just coming together as one. It was a good mixture of both things, and that's what I loved about it. It definitely didn't disappoint at all. It hit for me. I thought it was a really just fantastic film, and I'm probably going to see it again, like straight up. But I loved it, man. It hit for me for sure.
100%. I'm right there with you. I have already actually bought my tickets to go see it next week. Again, I'm probably actually going to go see it twice next week, just because not only is there like not really anything else in January that I'm like really dying to see, but this movie is just glorious. It's so good. And like you said, like it blends legacy, but also like modern day horror really well, because when you look at the landscape of what the genre has become since 2011's Scream 4 to what it is now, it's no longer about remakes and torture porn. It's now this elevated horror. It is now this weird season of, I love that they put a term to this too. They call it the requel, where it's not quite a reboot, but it's not quite a sequel. It exists somewhere between. And I think that this film took it in really interesting places. There are some nitpicks that I do have with this, but this is honestly the best Scream we've gotten since Scream 2, if not the original Scream. I absolutely adore this thing, and I am dying. Much like Ghostface says in the original one, "I'll gut you like a fist." I'm so amped to gut this thing with spoilers. So this is your official spoiler warning. We are jumping into this, and I think honestly I just gonna get disappointments out of the way. Is that cool? Because like I want to be mostly positive for throughout the rest of this, because this is quite honestly a positive experience.
Oh yeah, I mean my only disappointment is in Matthew Lillard, but so that's all I have to say.
So I'm glad that you brought that up first, because that is actually like my hugest gripe with this. And honestly, I thought that they were going to end up going that route. So like before we get into that, do you know what the original ending to Scream 3 was supposed to be?
I'm a bad Scream fan, do not actually.
So the original proposed Scream 3 treatment actually said, or maybe it was 2. It was either Scream 1 or Scream 2 or Scream 3, but because we never see a body with Matthew Lillard, Stu Macher is actually believed by fans to still be alive, which I love that theory. But one of the proposed sequels was that Stu was actually orchestrating everything from prison, and it was revealed in the last act that like he would have been kind of behind everything to like, you know, get his comeuppance and kind of like get his 15 minutes of fame. Because like when you look at like the sequels, like everyone talks about Billy Loomis, but we never actually talk about Stu Macher. It's like Stu never existed in this universe, or his like presence wasn't ever felt. And I honestly, they kind of talked about it here, but I honestly thought that they were going to go that route where it was revealed like that, I don't know, like Jack Quaid's character was like related to Stu Macher or something like that. But yeah, I kind of honestly was kind of a little bit bummed by the ultimate like reveal of who the killers were. But yeah, I would have honestly loved to see Matthew Lillard come back, because I thought that the way that they set it up in the first act, it kind of almost feels like they're going to go that Stu Macher route.
Yeah, I was anticipating it too with the way it was setting it up. And like I thought the same thing, that Jack Quaid's character was going to be like maybe Stu's son or something, or cousin or something like that, or like his nephew or something. But of course, you know, that wasn't the case. But yeah, it's just like they had all the throwbacks. I mean, like when they went to his house, I really thought like, holy crap, he's going to be in there somewhere, like this like little studio where he's been doing this forever. And you know, it didn't happen. I mean, like, I don't even want to get into it now, but like you talk about who the reveal of the murderers were. Like I almost saw that a mile away when the movie was getting going with, you know. So I don't know if that was like that to you, but I kind of sniffed it out pretty quick.
I didn't actually pick up on that, but yeah, I kind of, you know, it's easy to see once you kind of like look back in hindsight, that it was Amber and Richie kind of the killers. But like to me, like I don't know, man. Like I felt like my main problems with this movie, the very little that I do have, because I want to say that like this, I completely agree with IGN. This is a 9 out of 10. Like this is a phenomenal movie. But my main problems with it are the same problems I had with Halloween 2018, is that like, because you're paying so much legacy and you're delivering so much fan service, and it's being made by fans of the franchise, what tends to happen, and I talked about this in our Halloween 2018 episode, is that the ending is, because it's following that homage, the ending is starting to become predictable. And so when you're bringing things back into the Stu Macher household, you are, for lack of a better word, dude, like it is predictable. Like the third act of this is like, it's not 100% predictable, but it is. There are certain things where it's like, okay, they're paying homage to Scream 1 here. They're paying homage to, you know, this part of the original. They're paying, you know, so like, the going down the stairs to the basement, like, is a perfect example of that scene, like going back into the kitchen where the final act of the original movie takes place. So like, I don't know, to me, like those kind of parts were like where you're predictable kind of was a little bit tedious. And
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if you ever thought about this or this movie, but I went with my buddy Austin, and I leaned over and was like, dude, I don't know why, but I feel like the potential killer could be Tara and Sam's mother, because you never saw her. Did that ever pop in your mind at all?
no, not at all. That makes kind of perfect sense though.
Yeah, that she never was there. Like, you never saw her. It's like, oh, okay. But no, like with Amber, like in the beginning of the movie, like Ghost Face, essentially, like, I guess it was Richie, I don't really know, or might have been Amber, but like, they had her phone and like was like FaceTiming her to Tara, and so it's like when I realized that Amber never got touched during that whole thing, I was like, wait a second. And I guess it's like not everyone's paying attention to that stuff, but someone, I guess, like, I just like thought too much into it at first. I was like, wait, she didn't even get touched. That's weird. But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of one of those things that, and like with Jack Quaid, with Richie, like, I feel like Jack Quaid is too good of an actor to just waste as like the heroic boyfriend. I feel like he really needed something, and I just feel like, man, that's got to be one of the guys at the end. That has to be, because I just feel like he's so much more than the heroic boyfriend.
Which I recently, so like there is a podcast out there called Hello Sydney that was released in conjunction in anticipation for this fifth installment. And when they were talking about the original film, they brought up the fact that like Stu basically, like, not Stu, Billy ends up with Sydney solely to kind of orchestrate the events that take place in the third act. Like he had been planning that for a year and basically seduced her into kind of being with him. And in a way, like, you also kind of see that take place with Richie and Sam. Like, I really, really thought that was a nice touch. Nice callback that I think kind of gets overlooked a little bit in the original one when you kind of sit back and think about it, because like we're meeting these characters they already have a relationship, but like we don't know the backstory of how this relationship ended up coming to be. And I think it's a really fascinating part to mention out, is like that's also where we see Richie and Sam the beginning of this movie and throughout the duration of this film as well.
Oh yeah, like the only thing that didn't really throw back, like they didn't bring the whole throwback to me with Sydney and Billy, was there was no Don't Fear the Reaper played at all. But I did like the scene where the dude at the bar gets killed. The song they played, that song's been in every movie. Did you catch that song? I can't remember what it's called right now. It's in Dumb and Dumber too.
I didn't, but it's funny because the connection between him for horror fans, which to me it was kind of weird seeing this. I don't know if you picked up on this, but the actor's name is Kyle Gallner, and Kyle is actually rose to fame. In my opinion, like he's like most famous for a couple other horror films, notably Jennifer's Body, but also the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. And he's kind of like a weird kid in both of those movies, so it's really tough it's like really weird to see him as like a biker badass in this movie.
Yeah, my buddy also thought he was that country singer Riley Green. I was like, no, he's obviously a biker. Come on now. But yeah, I didn't know that was that dude. I that's the name I just really is on my radar. But yeah, man, they got him out of the way pretty quick. And like after he picked on everyone and he gets killed out there, like that was like really like that makes you think quick, like someone in this circle is connected to Ghostface, because like that dude got instantly carved. I mean, well deserved.
His death is among the quickest, but also the most brutal deaths in this thing. And that's one thing that like, to steal the quote Dewey in this movie, like, there's something different about this one. And this one, not only are you coming into it knowing that Kevin Williamson is not writing the script, Wes Craven is not directing this movie, it's not focusing on Sidney Prescott or Gail Weathers or Dewey, but what we're or Dewey Riley, I'll throw both names out there. It's focusing on a new crop of characters, which we've never gotten before. Even with Scream 4, there was still so much that was tied to Sidney throughout the duration of that film. So like, this is the first one where we've actually stepped away from Sidney, and we've started looking at other characters that are still tied to the legacy, but not quite, but are still pushing the franchise forward in new and exciting ways. And, you know, with that, you have, I'm going to butcher some of these names, and I'm so sorry. Melissa Barella, who plays Sam in this. This one, her sister, Jenna Ortega, who plays Tara in this, along with we get to see the cousins of Randy Meeks from, you know, Jamie Kennedy's from the first two films, when Mace and Chad and Mindy with Mason Gooding and Jasmine Savoy Brown. And then we also get to see Wes Hicks, who is a character from Scream 4. He is the offspring of Judy Hicks. And so it was really interesting to see how they were able to take these familiar characters, but then kind of show you a different angle of them. And I mean, dude, how did you feel about them bringing Skeet Ulrich back as Billy Loomis?
Dude, Skeet Ulrich was a freaking force ghost, man. It was awesome. Like, you're talking about, like, it was more connected to other characters than just Sidney, like the fourth one was. I feel like this movie wouldn't have been as great if it was just another focused on Sidney movie. Because, like, it was, like, it was so cool to see, like, a lot of focus on the sheriff, a lot of focus on the Meeks, and a lot of focus on Skeet, I'm gonna say his name instead of Billy, and like that being his illegitimate daughter. Like, that was really neat. But when it first got revealed that, like, she was going through some stuff, like, mentally, I didn't really know what. And then when it showed, Billy Loomis as like a force ghost, I guess you could say, I was like, okay, this is really cool. How are they going to tie this in? And then it reveals this her father and everything like that. And it's just like, man, like, that was a really good way to bring him back. Because I mean, we all know he's dead. He's dead in the movie verse. So it's like, that was a good way to bring him back, and it was a good way to, like, essentially end like Ghostface, I guess you could say. Because, like, you know, at the end it has him like nodding at her, and she takes out Richie. Was it Richie? Yeah, Richie. So it's like, you know, it was just like kind of comes full circle, like the orchestrator. It ends with his offspring. I thought that was really cool.
It's interesting too, like, that they decided to go that route, like, for legacy, because when you think about it, it's not just Scream 4, but when you look at, like, Scream 1 is tied to Sidney because Billy wants revenge for his mom walking out after Sidney's mom seduces his dad. Scream 2, you have Billy's mom getting revenge on Sidney. Then Scream 3, you have the brother coming back into the fold. Then Scream 4, you have the cousin. So, like, everything has been tied to Sidney in some way, shape, or form. But this is the first time that we've actually legitimately seen a person take on the Scream role and it not be tied to her. So we get to see all of these other legacy characters and kind of what their family explorations like. And I think it's really interesting that we're getting to see Sam's journey throughout the course of this, because, like, she really feels like she's the most developed out of all of these characters. But also at the same time, like, when you're talking about a character's mental health, I mean, imagine, like, we both come from I mean, I wouldn't say any family is functional, but like we have a lot of dysfunction in both of our families. And so it's like being able to like, that's nothing compared to having someone as a serial killer as your father. And I think that the subplot with her and kind of like taking the medication to kind of cope with it, and then like also having these visions of her father, but also at the same time like having to realize that like she could have like the legacy of her father, but also at the same time like carve a new legacy off for herself. I think that's something that every offspring struggles with, is like, do I have to be a product of where I came from, or can I create and invent something new? And it was a beautiful thing that they were able to go that route with this film.
Now she's gonna get a movie where she's a vigilante killing off all serial killers. No, I'm just kidding.
Bring it on.
Oh man, yeah. No, that was really cool, man. Like it just that's such like this unique and cool writing, and it was just like something different. Like I said, like, and I stand by this too. Like I said earlier, like if it was another just cookie cut, like connection to Sydney thing, it probably wouldn't hit as deep as it did. Because like as diehard fans, like I mentioned beginning of this, like this was like our Spider-Man in a way. Like we love all these characters universally, so it's like we want to see offspring of Meeks and offspring of Stu and offspring of Billy and all these other characters. So I guess just thinking about it, it was like a love letter to the fans. It's like, hey, like you've been supportive all these years, but here you go.
Well, that's the thing too, is that I think this film does really well. Is it not only gives legacy to Wes Craven and honoring the past 4 films, they also at the same time also name a character after him, which I thought was terrific in this film. And I don't know if you actually, I don't know if this was intended to be the joke or not, but there's a joke in the original Scream where Tatum actually messes up the names of the 2 big horror maestros. Instead of saying John Carpenter and Wes Craven, she actually says Wes Carpenter. And I think that like the last name of Tara and Sam is supposed to be a nod to that line. I could be wrong. But this film does legacy really well. And I was really worried about like the fact that like we're getting this new story with characters that have no ties, no connections to the original trinity of characters that we've known for the first 4 films. And how do you balance something like Dewey and Gale and Sydney push their stories forward post Scream 4, but not feel connected, also still be able to balance what has come before it that Kevin and Wes did. And I think that this film just does that so spectacularly, where it never feels forced. Like the legacy never feels forced. Everything about it feels natural.
Only thing missing was Emma Roberts, man.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is 1 death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Kidding. Radio silence.
She's gone on to do other things. No, I think that was kind of one of the things that like I really enjoyed about this movie though, man, is that you got that scene with like Dewey. The first two acts, you get those scenes with Dewey and Gale and Sydney, but it still focuses on these main core characters of Tara and Sam and Richie until you get to the third act where, dude, I'm not gonna lie, this is one of the only horror films I will ever say that brought me almost to the edge of tears. Like, this movie got me in ways that I wasn't expecting to get drawn into from an emotional standpoint.
I mean, if you're gonna bring up tears, I guess we'll just go ahead and just get it out of the way. Let's pour one out for Dewey Riley, man. Like that actually did make me. That actually brought me to tears when Gale figured it out, and that was a hard loss. I mean, I named my dog after him, and it's just like I knew someone from the original was gonna have to die, and I mean, the best bet probably is David Arquette, but we all know David Arquette will not die. There's a documentary about it, but it's just one of those days, man. Like that, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready. I never will be.
I honestly was not expecting that, and You Cannot Kill David Arquette is a great documentary. Last time I checked, it was streaming on Hulu. Highly recommend it. It's so good. Whether you're a fan of David Arquette or wrestling, there's something for everyone. But I think for me, like, I watched The Suicide Squad right before I went to go see this movie, and spoiler alert for those of you guys that haven't seen Suicide Squad yet, but like a lot of the legacy characters that were introduced in the David Ayer version don't make it out of the other side in the James Gunn version. And so like it makes sense that like we live in this like daring age of cinema where nobody is safe. And honestly, like those are more compelling stories to me. Like I think that this movie also feels very modern in that sense where like we're that like the true like quote unquote heroes of the story happen to be Sam, they happen to be Gale, it happens to be Sydney. I don't know, man. Because like when you look at like modern horror, like you also have like the quote unquote like good for her horror subgenre that's like strong female protagonists like Jennifer's Body, Midsommar, Hereditary, like the Babadook as it's talked about in here. And I think that like you also get that feeling at the end that like it doesn't need to be a guy that makes it through to the end. Like having that strong female presence, I think makes this film even more richer.
Oh yeah, man, for sure. In mentioning those movies, I love the part where Tara was on the phone and he was like, let's do some Stab trivia. She's like, Stab, I was a kid. Like, ask me about Hereditary. I named off all these like modern movies. I love that. That was funny. But like, did you feel called out at the scene where they're in the Meeks' living room, kind of going down like who could be the killer? And his niece is talking about how like fans of the first movie are pissed that the Stab 8. And it's like they feel offended. And she goes this whole tantrum how like we feel like insulted that like they ruined this movie. We love the first one so much. And I felt like she was talking to me and you for a second there. Like, as you know, we get pretty passionate over like films we love, and if it gets crapped on later on by a movie, we get pretty upset about it. I was like, oh man, she's coming after us.
Toxic fandom. No, I didn't feel called out because I mean, like, I feel like every franchise that like I love has bad entries in it. So it's like but like I think to your point, to further your point, there's that scene where you have Richie in the hotel room and he's like watching that YouTube video of like them breaking down what Stab 8 actually is, and like how they just called it Stab because like it has nothing to do with like the originals. It's not quite a remake. It's not quite a sequel. It's that requel concept. And I just love that, like the scene. He's like, yeah, he's like, dude, he's got like, there's like a flamethrower and like, he's just got like it looked like he had like a cut off like sleeveless shirt on, and he's just like going around killing people, but he's still got the ghost face mask on. And I was like, dude, I kind of low key want to see this movie. Like I'm not joking, but like I didn't feel called out because I mean, like and I'll be honest, like out of every fandom that exists that I've ever been a part of, like the horror feels the most welcoming to me. Like to me, like I feel like I can sit down and have a conversation with someone that like might have been a fan of like Halloween Resurrection, whereas like, you know, it's not a good movie, but like I think for both of us, like we look at it because of nostalgia. And like there are definitely like I have a Hellraiser poster behind me, and like Hellraiser is like notoriously has bad entries, but like there are still like entries that like I'll fight on and stand my ground on because like I'm entertained by them. And at the end of the day, like I don't want to worry about what everyone else wants to worry. Like I just want to like what I'm going to like. Like I want to be entertained. And I think with franchises, like you have to have the good with the bad.
Yeah, man, justice for Jason X. Bringing it here. But yeah, no, I mean, I get what you mean. Like, I feel like horror is the most like welcoming community with that, because like right off the bat, you know, like me say, you know, like, hey, she came after me, you know, like I guess right off the bat, I'm thinking of like outside of horror. Like for an example, we a few years ago we covered the new Hellboy movie, and we both were like, the first one was so great. What is this? You know. So, but yeah, moving on from that, something I wanted to bring up. I don't know if you noticed this, but I felt like Tara's character. Well, I feel like she reminded me a lot of a young Sidney Prescott. Did you see that at all, or like get that? Like I feel like she really reminded me a lot of a young Sidney.
No, I did not get that. Jenna Ortega does a great job in this movie. I think that I think right off the gate, like you look at how how Scream 2, 3, and 4 all opened up, and they all paid homage to Casey's death in the original film, and the fact that like she ends up like making it out alive, like you know that like this is not going to be like the other films. Like to quote Dewey, there's something different about this movie. But to me, like she never gave off the vibes as like a Sidney Prescott. Like she felt like, because also you look at, you know, to be devil's advocate, you look at the very first film and the first time that she has that conversation with Ghostface, she's like, oh, I don't like scary movies because like they're insulting. It's a big breasted girl who just makes dumb choices, and it's insulting to all female kind. And the very first conversation that Tara has with Ghostface, it's, oh yeah, I love horror. Like it's something that like me and my mom like bonded over, but also at the same time, like I love elevator horror. Like it's artistic and it's like emotional and it's got depth, but also at the same time, like it also still draws out a lot of those things. And like the movies that she mentions is like it follows Hereditary, Midsommar, like all of these, like the Babadook, like these really like artistic horror are some of the best movies that have been made. But also at the same time, like I don't know. I feel like going back to toxic fandom, I feel like people that really love elevated horror can sometimes be really snobby and like look down upon things like slashers and like B movies. And I'm just like, dude, like it's all entertaining. Like I love movies that can make me think as well as movies that can like just entertain me.
Yeah, I mean, this snobby fans that love the elevated horror, like they need to thank those movies, you know, like we got here because of all this stuff that happened. But yeah, I guess that's what I meant with her remind me of Sydney. It was less of like the vibe and more of just like looks. I felt like she not like looked like her, but I felt like a lot of like her expressions and stuff. Kind of, I don't know. It was. I'm one of those people that like
Oh, she was high like half the movie.
Yeah, she was. But I guess like I want those people to see similarities in people that other people no one else sees. It's been something my entire life. I can't explain it. Like for example, like my Uncle Norman reminds me a lot of John Cena, but no one else sees it. He doesn't see it, but I'm the only person that sees it, and I can't see John Cena without seeing my Uncle Norman, and vice versa. So it's just like I don't know. It's just a weird thing. I guess it's like I guess I'm a mutant. I have a weird power. I don't know.
But no one can see John Cena.
Hey, it's true. I've tried watching Peacemaker. I didn't see him in it. I don't know what's going on.
And that vibrator just floated in the air all by itself.
Yeah, sure did.
No, it's let's go back to legacy characters real quick because it's interesting to see how some of these characters have kind of coped with the last 10 years of this world. Dewey's no longer the sheriff. He's no longer a law enforcement agent again. To me, he kind of felt like, and I don't know if you got this vibe or not, but like, have you ever seen you watch a movie and you're like, I've seen this before, and you're like, you can compare it to like another scene and it has like that same exact tone.
Yeah, yeah.
So that scene where Richie and Sam go to Dewey's trailer and he's watching Gale on TV and like doesn't want to be bothered, dude. That scene is a direct homage, if not a complete rip, from Halloween 2018, where the two British podcasters go to interview Laurie. Did you get that vibe?
I did not, but now that you say that, I get the comparison there. I'm just glad that it ended better for them than it did for the podcasters.
But it's interesting to see where like Dewey's been, because like Dewey's always kind of been that like heart and soul of this franchise, and like him and Gale have had this like up and down relationship, but I love the fact that like despite all that they've been through, like that there's still this like love and stuff like that. But it's also interesting that like he's kind of now this like borderline like gruff alcoholic. I thought that was a really interesting take for him to, because and I think it goes to prove that like not everything works out for you for the best. But also at the same time, like you can also see that like, sometimes you have to help the little guy out. And I think that was kind of an awesome thing to be able to see with Dewey.
He's the definition of a man who has seen some ish. Straight up. You see that man, like, oh, that man's been through it. Don't mess with him.
Yeah, he even talks about it in like one of the earlier scenes with Richie and Sam, the scene we keep referring to. But he's like, yeah, I've been stabbed like 9 times. Like I've suffered permanent nerve damage. Like, I wouldn't want to go back to that. And I love how we're getting to see and get to explore how this legacy character has felt like the weight of all of these years of not only being a law enforcement officer, but also hunting down a serial killer and copycat killers over and over and over again, but also at the same time, like what that is sacrificed for him. And, he is not at peace for that. And I think that peace is a really hard thing to chase down, especially if you're not getting what you think you're either owed or what you think you need. And like, I think for him, like, and Gale, like they've had a really interesting dynamic going throughout the course of these 5 films where like they kind of like each other, then they didn't like each other, then they got married, then they tried doing the whole small town thing, and like she's like a big city girl, and you kind of see that dichotomy. But like relationships are a give and get kind of thing where like you have to sacrifice in order to have things work long time. And I think being married now for 8 years, like I've definitely known that it's like I might not always get my way, but like I need my wife to be happy first and foremost. And getting to see the fact that like now these characters aren't together, and you can kind of see like how that separation has really affected his mental health.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like that. I mean, like he's always been a relatable character. I mean, like he's the doofy dude getting the woman, and it's just like that makes him more relatable. But like talking about like them all still having that love despite the separation, dude. She set a girl on fire for that man. Straight up.
Dude, yeah. No, there's no getting around that. Like, well, let's be honest. Like, she accidentally she shot a girl, and then like the girl just happened to get on fire because of it. But like, you get to kind of see also like how like the death of Dewey is like not only affects like the characters internally, but also the characters externally, like the audience, like me and you. Like when I say like horror is like one of the only genres that like I don't ever get emotional towards or like tear up or but like the fact that like when they were like so there's a scene in the end where Sydney hands Gail a gun, and they both cock it and they look at each other and go, "For Dewey." And dude, when they said that, man, like I'm just like, I'm not right. Like even thinking about it now, man, like I'm like wanting to cry because like, dude, like that character means so much to this franchise and so much to the fans of the franchise, and it just really goes to show that like, like you're gonna love what you're gonna love, but also at the same time that like films like this like can also help people through emotional times, and this franchise in particular, out of any horror franchise or any franchise period, has like really helped me through some like dark times. And so like, Officer Dewey and his offspring of Officer Doofy from the Scary Movie like has really impacted me as a viewer and as a horror fan. So like, I think that getting to see his death was like something that was like really emotional. It was really brutal too.
Yeah, dude, and playing off the brutalness of that, like I know we've touched on it a little bit, but like this movie, a lot like Halloween Kills, dude. Like you said it earlier, like Dewey kept saying this felt different, dude. The kills, I want to touch on that for a little bit. The kills were so brutal in this. Like it was just like every time a murder would happen, me and Austin looked at each other with our jaw dropped, like, oh my god, that was awesome. It was just like probably the most brutality I've seen in a Scream movie. Me personally, it was just like, man, it was vicious. It was awesome. Like just how gory, brutal the stabs were and stuff, man. Like even this scene with her shooting the girl when she catches on fire, that was freaking awesome. And then you see her later all burned up running after him and she gets shot. That was actually pretty comical. But man, like I just want to talk on that because it was just like so just like when I think of slasher, that's what I want, man. I just want carving and gutting and just like blood. There be blood,
Absolutely, dude. Like this is a brutal film, and when you go back and I watched Ready or Not in preparation for this, and honestly, dude, like I forgot how brutal that movie was, and like certain parts, like the fact that like quite literally an entire family like blows up at the end of that movie. Spoiler alert. I hope I didn't ruin that for anyone. I didn't even think about that, but like that's a pretty brutal thing. It's like it's a legitimate death, and like this one, like they understand that too, but also like I think that that's kind of where horror is, because you brought up Halloween Kills. Like this is where we are when in terms of slashers, and I'm really curious to see how Texas Chainsaw next month is gonna adapt to this new found like bloodlust that horror audiences seem to crave with these types of movies, because like it seems like the more that the more decades that pass, it seems like the more brutal we have to get. And I'm so glad that this film like comments and like dives into that. It feels like a modern horror film.
Oh yeah, man. I was gonna mention too. You mentioned Texas Chainsaw. Like that's another movie that I feel like I could get emotional in just because the story going into it, and that's like a franchise that I'm really connected to. But I feel like so trusted, like, like they did Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends to kind of end like the original story. Same, I guess, with Scream. Same thing with Texas Chainsaw. And I think you've mentioned they're doing another Hellraiser. But I don't know if it's connected to the original ones or not. But like, I like the fact that like they're doing these movies to kind of like end, I guess, the storylines from the first movie. And it's like, this is the third, I guess, and this is the second installment of one. I guess Texas Chainsaw would be the third that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I feel so trusted with Texas Chainsaw. And if they do it with other movies after this, I would feel really trusted. If there's any of them they could do that with, I don't know.
So to answer your question, no. The brand new Hellraiser is an actual reboot. It is going to be coming from the same people that did this one, studio-wise, Spyglass Media, and David Bruckner, and the writers of last year's The Night House, which is a movie that I highly recommend. It is so good. So it has no connection to the original one. The Texas Chainsaw that we're getting next month is actually a direct sequel to the original 74. It's going to be their answer to Halloween 2018, which is another thing that I was really kind of semi-concerned about with this one. I don't know if you felt this way or not, but like, I honestly was thinking, what if this is like, what if they just ignore sequels 2 through 4? And like, this is like literally just a direct sequel to the first film. And in some way, like, there's a small part of this that kind of does that.
Yeah, in a way, but like at the same time, I do like the callbacks. Like, I mean, like the sheriff in the fourth movie and stuff like that. I do, because I know it's not a popular opinion. I really love Scream 4. I thought it was really good. But I didn't try to correct you earlier when you said that this was the best one since Scream 2, because I thought Scream 4 was pretty dang good. But that's just me. But a part of me wishes they would have done just a direct sequel to the first one, but at the same time, like, I'm really glad they didn't and just kind of nodded at everything, because I love all the 4 movies for what they are, and I'm glad this had a little bit of everything,
I'll say the controversial thing, like my ranking for this franchise as of right now, it could probably change, but my number 1 remains Scream 1. Scream 2 is my second one. This Scream is my third one. Scream 4 and then Scream 3 is my fifth one. But like, even Scream 3, for as messy of a film as that is, as horrible as Gail Weathers' haircut is in that movie, like, I just stopped. Like, I think that one still has great ideas and great execution for the most part. But I think likewise with this film, like the fourth one is a great movie. The second one is a great movie. But here's the thing is that like this is one of the very few horror franchises that every film is wonderful. Like, there's never a low point for these franchises. Like, yes, Scream 3 is kind of a quote unquote low point, but it never hits the low point of like Halloween 5 or the Seed of Chucky, like it or Jason Takes Manhattan. Like, it never goes that low. Like, it's always constantly like great work. And even like their other project, like Cursed, for as bad as like many people hate that movie, that's a great movie. It's a fun time. And it's also streaming on HBO Max. Check it out.
What are you talking about? This is the only horror franchise that every movie was great. Name one bad Leprechaun movie. I'm just kidding.
All of them.
I don't know, man. Leprechaun in the Hood was pretty good. I'm just kidding. I never seen it.
Yeah, all of them. So here's something that I think might be kind of brutal to talk about on a mental health podcast, but we're horror fans at heart. And do you have a favorite death in this movie?
Yes, the sheriff. she was such a I don't want to say the S word. She was being a jerk in the fourth movie, man, messing with Dewey, making Gail mad. She deserved it. That was it. She needed it. She had that coming, dude. I'm mad it wasn't Gail that did it. well.
Dude.
What was yours?
Honestly, dude, it might be Vince. I mean, his death is really, really just, I don't want to say subtle, but it's really quick, but also at the same time, like it's really effective. Like he just knew how to hit it real quick, either him or I would even dare say Richie. I think Richie had a pretty brutal death when like Sam finally embraces her Loomis roots. Like, it's like, man, like, all right, here we go. Like, stab. And like, the thing about like the original 4 films is like the stabbing is like very minuscule. Like, it's very light. And this one, they're just like, go for it like 30 times. Like just keep going. It's not enough.
I liked Wes's murder because like the knife going through the throat, like that was just so cool to see it like go through. You could see like the skin bulging out. Me and Austin both like, dude, this is awesome. Like, yeah, man, that was cool.
He did have a good one too. Like, I will say that that scene where like you thought he was gonna die, where he was like preparing for the sushi, really ticked me off because it's like they had set up all of these things, and it's like the music score that's around it. They're like, all right, he's gonna die now. Nope. Oh, okay, he's gonna die. Nope. Oh, he's gonna die. Nope. And like they kept that going for like 6 or 7 minutes, and like by the time that like he actually happened, like I was just like, all right, he's clearly gonna make it through to the climax. Nope. He gets stabbed right through the mouth, man, and like does it with style too. I have to say, like that's a great death too.
Dude, that scene you're talking about, like every time you think Ghostface is gonna be there, he's not. Me and Austin kept like gasping every time he closed the door. But talking about the score, dude, me and Austin we were talking this on the way home. We really liked the music, like the pop punk in it they play, because it really felt kind of like music from the first one. Like the scene where it shows with the high school with that kind of like poppy punk, like 90s sounding music playing, like that felt like such a 90s moment for me, because like a lot of those movies from the late 90s, early 2000s have like those like pop punk, bands like Starting Line, bands like that, in it. And I don't know, like I thought that was a good choice of music. Like that's kind of like the best kind of music to play, I guess. And at the end credit song was really good too. I really don't know who it was, but it was really good too.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
That's one thing, like rewatching all of these movies in preparation for it, like I love the first film's soundtrack, and even like the score that Marco Bastrami like does for like that film and like the subsequent ones that come. But like when you get into like the music, not just the score, but the music of this film, like this is the first film since the original to like embrace those pop punk roots. You're absolutely right. But I also want to throw in an honorable mention for a character that didn't die technically, but still faced off against Ghostface. Do you have a favorite one of those?
I have to think, because I mean, like,
I got mine.
Like, I like the fact that that Tara, kind of, went through it and came out on top. But I can't really think right now. That's a good question. I have to think about that.
So mine is Mindy. Like, I loved the scene where she's sitting there watching Stab, and they recreated the scene where Jamie Kennedy's character in the original one is watching Halloween, and like he's like shouting to the TV, and like so like as he's shouting, like Ghostface is slowly coming up behind him, and then they recreate that scene in real time as she's watching that. Like, I really loved that one.
Yeah, that was awesome. And it being his niece too, like it just made it like a chef's kiss situation. That was really neat.
This one, it's a really, really well done just thing, man. And I think that I'm curious to see where this goes from here, because I don't know if you know this or not, but the original intent for Scream 4 was to kick off a second trilogy. But when Scream 4 underperformed, it just kind of lied dormant for a while. But also at the same time, like, I don't feel like you need a sequel to this one. I feel like this one really kind of gave a perfect closure to Dewey, and also at the same time, like, Gale, Sam, and Sydney. Like, I think that this film is a perfect bow on the legacy of this story. But I also said the same thing about Halloween 2018. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, like, if they do a sequel to this movie, I really hope it's thought out, well written, and just it makes sense. I don't want something just thrown together, because it ended pretty well. It ended really great. I don't see a need in it, but I mean, if they do it, I'll be there. We'll be there, So, but yeah, man, I'm with you there. It could happen, but I kind of hope it don't.
Yeah, I'm right there too, man. I really hope that we don't get a sequel for this one, just because I love this movie just as is. I think it's really smart. I think that, like, it's commentary on, like, not only the genre of horror and how it's morphed since, like, the reboot torture porn days of, like, the early 2000s to 2010s, like, is really well received here with its, like, talking about, like, elevated horror, but also at the same time these, like, direct sequels to the original, and kind of like the re-envisioning of, like, the requels, I think is done really well here. But also at the same time, like, it comments really well on, like, toxic fandom and, like, how fans kind of expect to be treated, which I think was really interesting. And I kind of want to spend a couple minutes talking about, like, the scene where, like, Jack Quaid and Tara are given their motive to Sydney and Gale and Sam, and in the kitchen at the end, where it's like, we haven't seen a good stab movie since the original, and we just want to give them what do they say? We just want to give them new original content, like new inspiration to draw from the well. I think that, like, sometimes, man, like, do you ever feel like sometimes, like, fans kind of get, like, a bit too much, like, we just kind of feel like a little bit too entitled?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, thinking of someone who has a really close friend that texts me every day nitpicking something in the MCU. He just wakes up and thinks of something. It's annoying. We gotta have this. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of fans feel, like, entitled and feel like all these movies owe us something. And, like, at the end of the day, I mean, they don't owe us anything. It's like, if anything, we owe them, because they gave us something that we've held on to and have loved and used for coping mechanism, or just to escape to something to love for years, And it's just like sometimes fans just, they want what they want. They don't get it. They, go on Reddit and make crazy fan fiction and stuff like that, and then end up getting together with someone from Reddit and going and kill people. That's what happened in the movie.
Which, I gotta say, I love the fact that, like, Tara and Richie met on Reddit. Like, It's so believable though.
Dude,
but yeah,
I know, like,
go ahead.
like every night. Well, I was gonna say every night when me and my wife are trying to go to bed, or laying down for bed, they're always on Reddit, and she's always like reading me these crazy, just like weird stories of people just coming up with these craziest things, and it's like, Megan, stay off of Reddit. Someone's gonna come here and find you and kill you. Like, please, Reddit's crazy. Get off of it. We're just so interested. Like, no.
Just a little bit, yeah. It's but like also at the same time, like, you know, to go back to it, like you had mentioned like about how these like fandoms, like how they have been almost therapy for some of us. Like I talked to previously about like how this franchise in particular has helped me get through really tough times. Like I don't want to say overcome depression, but like Scream was definitely a comfort spot like when I was going through like harder times, and it served as like therapy through some of the harder times in my life. And you know, I don't feel like I'm entitled to a quote good Scream movie just because of my emotional connections and ties to these characters. Do I want that? Yes, I always want that. But do I need it? Do I feel entitled to it? No, because even if we would have come out and this movie would have been like just a trash pile, like burning up the way that Tara is in the end, you know, like I would still have the original movie. Like I would still have the original 4 films that I could just go to, and like, you know, I think that that's kind of something that the movement of like, you know, sequels and like requels and reboots and like whatever you want to call it, like regurgitation, like people like fail to understand that is that like even if they like did this sequel, like this entire, like they decided to start from scratch and do like a Scream like 2030, like, and it's just like a completely like retelling of like the original film. Like I still have the original film to go back to. Like I don't need something like that, and like, you know, that's fine. And it's just stay safe out there, kids. I think is kind of the moral of the story we're trying to get to, is because like, you know, in all seriousness, like they're, you know, I mean, the entitlement that I think is explored in this is not only a product of cyber, not only a product of toxic fandom, but also at the same time cyberbullying as well.
Oh, dude, like I listen to Sword and Scale podcast a lot. Me and my wife both do. We're big fans of it, and there's so many stories of people being murdered by people who felt like they were justified by doing it because they felt like they were owed something from the person that they murdered. Like there's so many stories constantly that dude finds to cover of someone's like, yeah, that person did this to me, so I killed him for it. You know, and it's just like, you know, like just I guess what Josh said, like, you know, watch out, like, because like you go on the internet and you could say you could joke with someone, just a small joke, they're going to take it far and come find you and put a knife in you because they feel entitled, and it's just stupid. Like it's on to the end of the day, it's just like, why? If you're so upset, just reach out. But hey, I didn't like that joke. You know, it's just, you know, like Josh said, you know, stay safe out there. Stay off Reddit.
I think, and you know, also too, it's like be careful of like what you're putting out there, because I mean we've seen so much of cancel culture come back and come after, you know, guys like even like freaking James Gunn's a great example. Like James Gunn said some like really immature things way back when in the day, like, and he's apologized for it several times, and like people have just been like, dude, like what the heck, man, like cancel him. And so like, I mean, it worked out for DC fans, but like Marvel fans are still waiting on Guardians 3. But also at the same time, like, you know, is be careful what you're putting out there. Like think twice before you hit enter and like put that stuff out there, because once it's out there, dude, it's out there. And also at the same time, like, know your audience. Like there are definitely some things that like I've addressed, you know, with certain people offline face to face that have, you know, that I would never say behind a microphone. And vice versa. You know, I think that it has to be like you understanding and knowing like, hey, like this is where I am and this is where I'm going to be. as far as that kind of stuff goes, like, and don't be afraid to be yourself. And I don't know, at the end of the day, like, tread lightly when it comes to social media, because like there are mental health effects that like we don't fully understand yet.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I'm with you. I agree with everything you said right there.
I am going to put this through our Rorschach rating scale, but before I do, I just want to say on that note of mental health and social media that if you guys need, check it out. We've mentioned it already in the show before, but please check out our mental health resource library. There are links in the show notes wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this podcast from. But this movie, much like Psycho Gorman did last year, set the bar pretty high for a top 10 movie candidate for the year. And this movie currently stands, as of this recording, as my number one movie of the year. I'm curious to see if it'll still be in the top 10 by the time the year's end, because there's a lot of great movies coming out this year. But what do you give this movie 0 out of 5 on a Rorschach rating scale?
So you said setting the bar on Psycho Gorman. The year ended last year, and that movie was still in my top 10. Potential
same.
Scream will probably still be in mine. I just have a feeling. But I'm going to go 5 knives out of 5 on this one. I'm taking over with the Rorschach scale for a second. We're getting 5 stabs.
Oh, man, it set that bar high. I am also, I'm not going to give this 5 because I did have some problems with it. It's ending. But this is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. This film is paced incredibly well. It's written well. It balances really well. It feels modern, but yeah, it still pays homage to what came before it. Man, it's emotional. It's funny. It's a great horror film. It's a great film, period. And so we're gonna meet in the middle, and this one is gonna end up getting a 4.75 out of 5 for us here.
Yeah, and listen, the studio, directors, everybody that worked in this movie, if you have extended footage of Stab 8, please send it our way. I would like to see where this flamethrower goes.
I do too, man. Like, I just what if that was like their pitch to like Paramount? They're just like, so anyways, it's like it's gonna comment on like elevator horror, and instead of knives, he uses a flamethrower.
I mean, like, while we were recording this podcast, I had a thought, like, I would love for Paramount just to do, like, maybe 1 hour each, like, Stab 1 through 8, like, just 1 hour for each movie, just to do it, just to get the giggles out there. And end it with that. I would love it. That'd be really funny if they did that.
Dude, on that note, man, I don't know how you felt about it. I loved the first 2 seasons of the MTV show. The VH1 series was okay.
Yeah.
But like the first 2 seasons of that sequel worked really well, I think.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched them back in a while, but I watched them when they were on air, and I really enjoyed it.
So let us, honestly, like, I would love to see like Ghostface meet Brandon James in like a weird parallel universe. But I think that's going to do it for us on this episode. Make sure that you guys let us know. We would love to hear what you guys thought about Scream. Did it live up to expectations? Did you find it stupid? Do you disagree with us? Let us know. Tweet to us at Victims and Villains. But speaking of Twitter, where can people find you online, sir?
Twitter, Brendan W. Miller, Instagram at The Changing of Times. If you want to see actual photos of my wife in her wedding dress looking very distraught at me in my Scream outfit after a wedding, hit me up on Instagram and I will show you this. Is this real? Josh was there. He married us. He saw how fast I transitioned from groom to ghost face.
Oh, dude, it was like I dude. He was like, bye y'all. Come back out of ghost face.
Like as soon as Josh, all right, I now pronounce you man and wife. Okay, bye. I'll be back.
And it's just like, where'd Brandon go? Oh, it's Ghostface. Also, that's one thing that I will say too, that like as a nice nod that I liked that this film, before I give my social media, is the scene right before Dewey dies and you see him touch the voice changer. Like, I loved that little scene. It's such a blink and you miss it kind of thing, but man, is it sweet.
Yeah, that was a little touch there, man. Just put a little salt on it, you know.
Yeah, it's the attention to detail. But you guys can follow me. I am at Captain Nostalgia on Letterboxd, and you guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, YouTube, and wherever you guys get your podcasts from. But most importantly, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net, where you guys can find more podcasts like this, movie reviews, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. So until next time, remember to keep on chilling. Have a good night, guys. Or do we?